In a world where appearances often shape first impressions, the power of plastic surgery extends beyond cosmetic desires. It can transform lives. Today, we're sharing the heartwarming stories of children for whom surgery opened the doors to new beginnings. From overcoming physical challenges to embracing their true selves, these young heroes' journeys emphasizes the life-changing impact of medical intervention. Join us as we delve into the inspiring lives of kids transformed by plastic surgery. Number 15, Connie Lloyd. We all know the bright red noses of clowns, but for Connie, that wasn't a costume. It was her reality. She was born with a benign tumor that grew to completely cover her tiny nose. This unique feature made her a target for teasing from other kids. They called her names and constantly pointed at her red nose, which must have been incredibly hurtful for a little girl. Things got even harder when doctors initially told Connie's parents there might not be a cure. During a prenatal ultrasound at 26 weeks, they saw a shadow on Connie's nose. Thankfully, when she was born, the shadow was gone, a huge relief for her parents. But that relief wouldn't last long. Just 24 hours later, they noticed a small red mark on Connie's nose. It seemed like a minor thing at first, but within a month, that mark had exploded into a large red mass, 1.5 inches in diameter. Doctors diagnosed Connie with a condition called hemangioma, a benign tumor. They tried treating it with a medication typically used for heart conditions, but it didn't work. Her parents were heartbroken. Doctors warned them that the tumor could keep growing, and any scratch or bump could lead to serious bleeding. But Connie's mom wasn't one to give up easily. She refused to accept that there were no options for her daughter. Determined to find a solution, she delved into research and tirelessly searched for specialists. Finally, her persistence paid off. She found a surgeon who specialized in treating facial disfigurements. This incredible doctor offered Connie a chance at a normal life. He performed surgery to carefully remove the tumor, leaving behind only a small scar. This surgery was life-changing for Connie. Finally, she could breathe easily and, more importantly, she could finally feel comfortable and confident in her own skin. Number 14, Sloan. Sloan entered this world not with a typical baby's cry, but with a challenge unlike any most of us can imagine. A massive, non-cancerous tumor called a hemangioma covered the entire left side of her tiny face. This growth wasn't just disfiguring, it was already affecting her facial nerves and muscles. It was clear from the very beginning that Sloan needed a fighting chance at a normal life. Her parents, understandably heartbroken, never let despair cloud their love for their daughter. They knew they had to find the best possible care for Sloan, and they wouldn't rest until they did. So, at the incredibly young age of 10 months, Sloan embarked on a journey of healing through surgery. Imagine the courage it takes for a baby to go through even one surgery. Now, picture Sloan facing 9 whole procedures by the time she was just 2 years old. Each operation was a battle, a test of her tiny body's resilience. But Sloan, a true warrior princess, fought through it all. The final surgery, performed by the skilled Dr. Milton Weiner in New York City, had a specific goal: to minimize the scarring left by the previous procedures. Dr. Weiner, a specialist in hemangiomas and facial malformations, knew the delicate nature of this operation. Before even making the first incision, he meticulously mapped out Sloan's facial nerves and muscles. This careful planning ensured that during the surgery, there would be no damage to these vital structures. These surgeries were no small feat, especially for a child so young. During a trip to New York City for one of Sloan's surgeries, her family met the amazing ESPN anchor Hannah Storm. Touched by Sloan's story and her family's unwavering dedication, Hannah, who has a foundation dedicated to helping families facing similar challenges, stepped in to offer financial support. This incredible act of kindness, combined with Dr. Weiner's dedication to achieving the best possible outcome for Sloan, gave her the tools she needed to heal. Number 13, Elise Chaddock. At first glance, you wouldn't think anything was different about Elise, but take a closer look, and you might notice something unique about her nose. While some people might be okay with their features, Elise wasn't comfortable with hers. Unfortunately, some of her friends weren't very kind. They called her names like Shark Toucan, Big Nose, and even hammerhead shark. This teasing was incredibly hurtful for Elise. She felt like her nose was taking over her identity, and it chipped away at her self-esteem. Imagine trying to ignore classmates constantly making fun of you. It became too much for Elise, and she often found herself alone in her room, crying. Her mom couldn't bear to see her daughter so unhappy. So, she decided to take action. Through some research, Ellis's mom found Dr. Michael Nickel of the Magic Mirror Foundation. This incredible organization helps people like Ellis by offering free cosmetic surgery. To their immense joy, Dr. Nicole agreed to operate on Elise's nose. The surgery itself only took a little over 2 hours, but for Ellis, those hours changed everything. When the bandages came off, she was filled with excitement. Elise finally had a nose she felt confident about. School, which used to be a place of dread, now became something Ellis looked forward to. Now, when you look at Ellis, all you see is confidence shining through. Number 12. Milagros Caron. Milagros was born with a rare condition that caused her legs to be fused together from her thighs all the way down to her ankles. This meant she would need surgery to help her walk properly. At first, the doctors planned to separate her legs only up to her knees. But during the surgery, things went even better than expected, and they were able to separate her legs completely. Of course, surgery is just the first step. After the operation, the biggest concern for the doctors was getting Milagros to use her new legs. Thankfully, it wasn't long before she wiggled one of them. Still, her legs needed to be kept together for a while, about 5 to 10 days, to heal properly. After that, the doctors started working on helping Milagros bend her knees. Their hope was that within 2 years, she would be walking on her own. There was also one more surgery needed to fully reconstruct her hip area, which would make walking even easier. But Milagros's condition wasn't just about her legs. This birth defect affected many other parts of her body, including her digestive system, reproductive system, and other vital organs. Experts estimated she might need up to 15 years of additional corrective surgeries to address all these issues. On top of everything else, Milagros had another major challenge: her kidneys. Her left kidney was misshapen, and her right one was very small and located much lower in her body than usual. Doctors warned Milagros's parents that she might not live long, as this rare condition often claimed newborns within hours of birth. Miraculously, Milagros defied the odds. She lived for 15 amazing years. Sadly, she passed away while waiting for a kidney transplant. Number 11. Gage Berger. Have you ever felt like something about yourself made you want to hide from the world? That's what Gage Berger was going through for most of his childhood. For 6 whole years, Gage wasn't called by his real name. Instead, kids teased him and called him elf ears because of how his ears folded in slightly. This constant bullying took a toll on Gage. He became withdrawn, preferring to be alone than face the ridicule. He even stopped wanting to go to school or make friends. Gage felt like his ears were the source of all his problems. He'd constantly try to pin them back in the mirror, and whenever he felt nervous or upset, his hands would instinctively reach up to touch them. It became a constant reminder of the negativity he faced. Seeing their son struggle so much, Gage's parents knew they had to do something. They started researching and discovered a procedure called otoplasty ear reshaping surgery. It was a ray of hope for Gage and his parents. They talked to Gage about the surgery, explaining the entire process and getting his consent. Gage was thrilled at the possibility of finally feeling comfortable in his own skin. His parents then contacted Dr. Stephen Mobley, a facial plastic surgeon who runs an incredible foundation called the Mobley Foundation, located in Salt Lake City, Utah. This amazing organization provides free cosmetic surgeries for school-aged children who are being bullied and whose families can't afford the procedure. While most plastic surgery isn't recommended for kids under 18, otoplasty is an exception, and the Mobley Foundation recognized that Gage truly needed it. After a consultation, Dr. Mobley determined that Gage was a good candidate for the surgery. At just 6 years old, Gage underwent the 2-hour procedure under local anesthesia. His parents and his trusty stuffed tiger, Tiggy, were there by his side the whole time. 2 days later, the moment of truth arrived. The bandages came off, and Gage finally saw his new ears. The look on his face was priceless. He couldn't stop smiling, his grin stretched from ear to ear. When he went back to school, everything had changed. He came home excited, telling his parents how well he played and how many new friends he made. Number 10. Arom Aristakesian. Most newborns have birthmarks, but Artyom's were unlike anything most people have ever seen. He wasn't just sprinkled with a few tiny marks. A staggering 80% of his tiny body was covered in dark, raised patches of skin called nevus birthmarks. The sight was so overwhelming that the hospital staff, unsure of how to care for him, even suggested Artyom's parents give him up for adoption. Imagine being told your newborn baby might be better off with another family. Artyom's parents couldn't even consider it. Their love for their son was immediate and fierce. They refused to give up on him and brought him home, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. These birthmarks were more than just a cosmetic concern. Doctors explained that nevus birthmarks put Artyom at a higher risk for developing skin cancer later in life. As if that wasn't enough, they also discovered that Artyom had nevus birthmarks on his brain, which caused him to have occasional seizures. This meant constant monitoring and potential future medical interventions. But Artyom wasn't just battling birthmarks. He was also born with spina bifida, a condition affecting the development of his spinal cord. This required surgery to correct, a daunting procedure that took 90 long minutes. The recovery period was just as challenging, taking 5 whole days before his parents could finally hold their precious boy again. Finally, the day came for Artyom to meet his siblings. Wide-eyed and curious, they innocently asked why he had chocolate all over his face. Once they learned about Artyom's condition, these little ones surprised everyone with their fierce protectiveness of their brother. Artyom's journey is far from over. He faces ongoing medical care to manage his condition and the potential for future surgeries. Number 9. Logan Hannah. Here is another one of 3 kids in this video whose ears made them a subject of bully by their peers. These kids' lives were transformed by plastic surgery. At just 12 years old, Logan was bullied relentlessly for his ears. Kids called him hurtful names, making him feel sad and insecure. He even tried growing his hair long to cover them, but nothing seemed to work. This constant teasing was taking a toll on Logan. He just wanted to feel good about himself. Thankfully, his parents noticed his struggle and decided to help. After some research, they found Dr. Steve Brid, a plastic surgeon in Dallas who specialized in otoplasty, a procedure that reshapes ears. The surgery itself was pretty straightforward. It took about 2 hours, with 1 hour dedicated to each ear to gently pin them closer to his head. After a week of recovery, the moment of truth arrived. It was time to see the results. The bandages came off, and Logan's eyes widened in surprise. There it was, a whole new him staring back from the mirror. His ears looked different, but more importantly, they didn't define him anymore. A smile spread across his face as he finally said "he looks good," a phrase he hadn't uttered in 12 years. Number 8. Fatima. Fatima was born with a rare condition called craniofacial anomalies. This means her face developed differently than most. One way this manifested was a groove running down the middle of her face, caused by a birth defect called a nasal encephalocele. These conditions are incredibly uncommon, affecting only about 1 in 5,000 babies. Fatima's journey extends far beyond her medical challenges. Her family, facing a tumultuous time in Syria, made the heartbreaking decision to leave their home during a civil war. They had already attempted several surgeries to improve Fatima's facial features, but the results weren't ideal. One surgery even left a plastic tube protruding from her nose. Despite these setbacks, Fatima's family never lost hope for a brighter future. When they arrived in America, they were connected with a local general surgeon who, in turn, knew the perfect specialist for Fatima. This doctor, Dr. Ruiz, understood Fatima's situation in a unique way. He himself had undergone facial reconstructive surgery in the past. Touched by Fatima's story and her unwavering spirit, Dr. Ruiz readily agreed to take on her case. What followed was a series of intricate procedures aimed at rebuilding the right side of Fatima's face. Dr. Ruiz meticulously used bone grafts extracted from Fatima's own skull, along with specially designed skin flaps, to create a new, more defined shape. The journey wasn't a walk in the park. There were additional steps involved, including the placement of a tissue expander under Fatima's forehead. This expander required regular injections of saline solution to slowly stretch the skin. This was a crucial step, as the expanded skin would eventually provide enough material to construct a brand new nose, along with cartilage harvested from her ribs. After all this dedication and perseverance, Fatima will only need some minor touch-up procedures to complete her facial reconstruction. Number 7. Huikang. Huikang came into the world with a very rare condition called transverse facial cleft. This basically means his face developed differently, creating a separation that ran from his mouth all the way up to his ears. Imagine having a permanent mask fused to your face. That's what it was like for Huikang. This condition was incredibly difficult for Huikang's family. They just wanted their son to be healthy and happy, but his facial difference made things very challenging. Doctors at the No. 163 Military Hospital in Changsha, the capital of Hunan Province in China, worked tirelessly to repair his facial bones. Unfortunately, their initial efforts weren't successful. Huikang's mom, Yi Lianxi, was understandably devastated and confused. During her pregnancy, she had gone through 3 regular ultrasounds and even a Doppler ultrasound scan, but none of them detected any abnormalities. It must have been a huge shock to see her son born with this unexpected condition. Transverse facial cleft is incredibly rare, affecting only about 1 in every 60,000 births. It's often associated with deformities of structures developing from the first and second branchial arches. While rare, it's important to know these things happen. Thankfully, Huikang's family didn't give up hope. With the help of generous public donations, they were able to afford several surgeries to try and repair his face. In 2010, 2 successful operations made a big difference in Huikang's appearance. The doctors knew it would be a long journey. While the surgeries improved his face, it would likely take 10 years or more to see if his facial bones would grow normally. However, even with the long road ahead, the first operation was a step in the right direction. Huikang's face already looked better, and everyone hoped that with time and continued treatment, he would continue to improve. Number 6. Libby Coleman. Libby is an amazing little girl with Larsen syndrome. Larsen syndrome is a rare condition that throws a wrench into how bones develop. Kids with this disorder are born with dislocated joints, especially in their hips, elbows, and knees. Just imagine the pain. It must be incredibly hard to watch a child go through that. These dislocations aren't just uncomfortable, they can also make it tough for them to move around freely. On top of that, Larsen syndrome can cause some unique facial features, along with distinct characteristics in the hands, fingers, and feet. Think square-shaped fingertips. X-rays of children with Larsen syndrome often show extra little bones in their wrists and ankles. Things can get even more complicated with Larsen syndrome. Sometimes, it can lead to being short in stature, having trouble hearing, and even developing an abnormal curvature of the spine. This curvature can cause weakness in the arms or legs, or even both. The reason Larsen syndrome happens is because of genetics. It's passed down from parents to their children in a specific way called autosomal dominant inheritance. Libby's story is a perfect example. When she was born, both her knees and elbows were dislocated. It must have been heartbreaking to see her in so much pain. But here's the good news. Larsen syndrome can be treated. The specific treatment depends on the individual's symptoms. For joint problems like dislocations, doctors can use orthopedic surgery to fix them and get them working properly again. And for facial differences, plastic surgery can be an option to address those concerns. After Libby's family moved to the United States, they were able to take her to a hospital where she had surgery to fix her joints. The surgery was a success, and Libby finally got the perfect healing she deserved. Before we move on, here's today's subscriber's pick. The image shows 4 incredible children who all faced unique challenges. One child had a large facial swelling, another had severely swollen lips, a third had a facial difference due to a cleft, and the last one had prominent ears that led to bullying. These challenges can have a big impact on a child's confidence and self-esteem. But here's the inspiring part. All 4 of these kids' lives were transformed by plastic surgery that helped them overcome these obstacles. This image is a powerful reminder of the impact medical advancements can have on people's lives. It raises important questions about self-acceptance, bullying, and the role of plastic surgery. So what are your thoughts on this, everyone? Do you think plastic surgery can be a positive force for change? Share your opinions and experiences in the comments below. Number 5. Dida Montalvo. Dida had a very rare condition called congenital melanocytic nevus. This is a long way of saying he was born with a giant birthmark that covered most of his back, making it look like a turtle shell. Imagine that, a giant birthmark affecting his entire back. It's incredibly rare, affecting only about 1 in every 20,000 babies born. But in Didier's case, the doctors said it was the worst they'd ever seen. This massive growth wasn't just unusual, it caused Didier a lot of pain and discomfort. It was itchy, and made it hard for him to do everyday things like playing or simply moving around comfortably. On top of that, things were even tougher for Didier because of the way people in his village treated him. They were scared and called him names, believing the birthmark was a sign of evil. Sadly, this meant Didier couldn't go to school or even get baptized, things most children take for granted. To make matters worse, the birthmark kept growing bigger every day. Doctors worried it could become cancerous, a condition called malignant, or even affect his brain. Didier's mom wanted to get help, but surgery was incredibly expensive, and they just couldn't afford it. She felt hopeless, until a local newspaper shared Didier's story. The article touched so many people's hearts that donations poured in. This incredible generosity allowed doctors in Colombia to put together a special team to perform a risky surgery. This surgery wasn't just about removing the birthmark. It was about giving Didier a chance at a normal life and freeing his family from the social exclusion they faced. Leading the surgery was a top plastic surgeon named Neil Bulstrode. When he first saw Didier, he was shocked. The birthmark covered 3/4 of Didier's body circumference. The surgery was complex and required a series of skin grafts over several stages. The size and protruding shape of the mole made it incredibly difficult, but thankfully the surgery was a success. Didier's birthmark is gone, and he can finally live the happy and normal life he deserves. Number 4. Samu Meco. Samu wasn't born like most children. He had a rare condition called Tessier craniofacial cleft. This basically means the two sides of his face didn't grow together properly, affecting both his vision and his ability to breathe. Imagine having your face misaligned and struggling to see clearly or breathe easily. That must have been incredibly difficult for Samu. Doctors called Samu's condition rare for a reason. It affects only a very small number of babies born each year. But for Samu and his family, it was their reality. They knew Samu needed help, and thankfully, they found it with Dr. James Bradley, a top pediatric plastic surgeon. Samu's surgery was a big one. It took a whole 7 hours. During that time, Dr. Bradley worked his magic to realign Samu's face. He even had to rebuild Samu's nose from scratch. Think about that. A brand new nose. Imagine how excited Samu must have been knowing he'd finally be able to see properly and breathe easily. After those long hours, Samu emerged from surgery with a brand new face. Dr. Bradley explained that they had to loosen up the muscles in his face to be able to reposition everything correctly. But even though the surgery was intense, Samu was just too happy to care. He finally felt as good as he looked. Seeing himself in the mirror for the first time with his new face must have been an incredible moment for Samu. He finally had a face that matched the amazing kid he was on the inside. His smile was brighter than any superhero cape. Samu was so happy, he was practically glowing. The hospital staff, knowing how much Samu loved superheroes, arranged a special meeting for him. They brought in a superhero character to meet their favorite little hero. It was a heartwarming moment, but the truth is, Samu was the real superhero in that room. Number 3. Murphy. When Murphy came into the world, his parents Tripp and Kim Morgan noticed something unusual. His lower lip was swollen and his chin had some different coloring. At first, they thought nothing of it, but over the next few months, Murphy's bottom lip just kept getting bigger and bigger. Tripp and Kim, who live in Little Rock, Arkansas, were understandably worried. They documented the swelling with pictures and videos, not knowing exactly what was causing it. Finally, They got Murphy diagnosed with a venous malformation. This is a long way of saying it's a cluster of blood vessels that formed incorrectly, and in Murphy's case, it caused his lip to balloon to an unnaturally large size. This condition wasn't just uncomfortable for Murphy, it also drew unwanted attention. Kim says people would often stare and make comments, assuming something bad had happened to him. It must have been tough for Murphy, especially as a little kid. Doctors first tried treating Murphy with injections, the kind typically used for varicose veins. These helped reduce some of the swelling after about 1.5 years, but Murphy's lip was still far from normal. The next step was surgery. Of course, this was a big decision for Tripp and Kim. They loved Murphy just the way he was, but they also wanted him to feel comfortable and confident. Dr. Milton Weiner, a renowned vascular surgeon in New York City, reassured them that it would be fixed. Surgery day arrived, and it was an emotional roller coaster for Murphy's parents. They knew he was in the best hands with Dr. Weiner, but any surgery comes with risks. As Murphy went into the operating room at Manhattan's Ear and Throat Hospital, Kim gave him a kiss goodbye, reminding him that he was their perfect little boy no matter what. The surgery took about 2 hours, and Dr. Weiner was happy to report it went perfectly. He removed a small section of Murphy's lip to make it thinner, and then carefully removed the malformation itself. The relief and joy on Tripp and Kim's faces when they finally saw Murphy after surgery was incredible. Their little boy looked amazing, and the results were better than they could have ever hoped for. Number 2. Ollie Trezise. In the charming Welsh town of Maesteg, there's a young boy named Ollie Trezise, whose story echoes the fairy tale of Pinocchio, not just in appearance but in spirit too. Born with a rare cranial disorder that caused his brain to grow through a crack in his skull, Ollie's distinctively protruding nose has drawn comparisons to the beloved Disney character. However, Ollie's journey is about more than his unique look. From the moment Ollie was born, his mother, though initially shocked by his appearance, embraced him with unconditional love, recognizing his worth beyond physical attributes. Ollie's family has faced his condition with resilience, choosing to celebrate his individuality and encourage his confidence despite societal pressures. As Ollie grew, it became apparent that surgery was necessary to correct his breathing. Despite fears for her young son, his mother consented to a life-changing operation in November 2014 at Birmingham Children's Hospital. The successful 2-hour surgery involved reconstructing Ollie's skull and nose, leaving Ollie with a large zigzag scar, but also a path to recovery, marking the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Number 1. Nadia Ilsa. Nadia Ilsa's story is quite notable for highlighting the impact of bullying on young individuals and the lengths to which they might go to find relief and acceptance. Nadia was a young girl from Georgia who, at the age of 14, received plastic surgery to pin back her ears, a procedure known as otoplasty. She had been bullied for years over the appearance of her ears, with cruel nicknames like Dumbo, which severely affected her self-esteem and confidence. Nadia's surgery, which also included a rhinoplasty and chin reduction, was funded by the Little Baby Face Foundation, a non-profit organization that provides free or low-cost reconstructive surgery to children born with facial deformities or who have been victims of bullying due to their appearance. The transformation was not just physical, it dramatically improved Nadia's self-confidence and her outlook on life. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.